Have you ever stepped into a place and felt like the air itself was alive, watching you, waiting for you to make one wrong move? Not just a creepy vibe, but a gut punch feeling that something's wrong, something you can't explain. That's exactly what I felt when I walked onto the set of a low-budget horror film called The Hollowjp. What started as a dream job turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. This isn't a script. This isn't fiction. Every word I'm about to tell you is 100% true, and I'm still trying to make sense of what happened. So, settle in, maybe keep the lights on, and let me take you back to the night my world turned upside down. Before I dive into the nightmare, let me give you some context. My name's Alex, and I'm a freelance production assistant, basically the grunt worker of the film industry. It's not glamorous. You're hauling equipment, fetching coffee, and praying the director doesn't yell your name for the third time in an hour, but I love it. There's something electric about being on a film set, watching a story come to life, seeing actors transform into characters, and feeling like you're part of something bigger. I've worked on all kinds of projects, indie comedies, gritty thrillers, even a few music videos, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened on the set of The Hollowjp. It was August 2023, and I was between gigs, scraping by on instant noodles and the occasional side hustle. A friend of mine, Sarah, called me out of the blue. She was producing a low-budget horror flick and needed an extra PA for a week-long shoot. The pay was decent, $800 for the week, which was a lifeline for me at the time. The film was called The Hollowjp, a supernatural horror about a group of college kids who stumble across an abandoned theater in the woods. They find out it's haunted by the spirits of a theater troupe who died in a fire decades ago. Classic horror setup, right? I thought it sounded like fun. I'd worked on horror sets before, and I loved the spooky atmosphere, the fake blood, the jump scares, the cheesy ghost effects. I said yes without a second thought. The shoot was taking place in a small town called Millhaven, about 2 hours outside the city. The location was the Rosewood Theater, a crumbling relic from the 1920s that had been abandoned since the 80s. Sarah sent me some photos, and I was immediately sold. The place was perfect for a horror movie, sagging velvet curtains, rows of dusty seats, and this eerie time capsule vibe that made it feel like the world had forgotten it. The crew was small. Marcus, the director who had a reputation for being intense but talented. Tara, the cinematographer, who was a wizard with lighting. Dave, the sound guy, who was always tinkering with his gear. And a handful of actors, most of them fresh out of drama school and hungry for their big break. There were maybe 12 of us. Total, a tight-knit group, ready to make something scary and cool. We arrived in Millhaven on a Monday afternoon, and the Rosewood Theater loomed at the edge of town, half hidden by overgrown trees and a rusted chain-link fence. From the outside, it looked like a forgotten castle, grand but decaying, with cracked stained-glass windows and a marquee that was missing half its letters. I remember stepping out of the van and feeling a chill, even though it was a warm summer day. The air felt heavy, like it was carrying a weight I couldn't see. I brushed it off. Old buildings always have a vibe, right? They're supposed to feel creepy. That's why we were there. That the first day on set was hectic but normal. We spent hours unloading equipment, setting up lights and blocking scenes. The Rosewood's interior was even creepier than the outside, peeling wallpaper, cobwebs in every corner, and a musty smell that clung to your clothes. The auditorium was the main set, with a massive stage framed by tattered red curtains. The seats were covered in dust, and the floorboards creaked with every step. It was exactly what you'd want for a horror movie. But I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling, like I was being watched. The first weird thing happened that afternoon. I was rigging a light stand in the auditorium when I heard whispering, not the crew chatting or actors rehearsing lines, but this low rhythmic murmur, like a group of people talking just out of earshot. I stopped what I was doing and looked around. The nearest person was Tara, 20 feet away, fiddling with her camera. The actors were backstage, and Marcus was outside on a call. I called out, "Hey, who's talking?" But no one answered. The whispering stopped, and I convinced myself it was just the wind or the building settling. Old places make noises, right? That night, we shot a scene where the main character, played by an actress named Lily, finds an old playbill tucked under a seat. The prop department had made it look authentic: yellowed paper, faded ink, the kind of detail that screams haunted theater. In the scene, Lily's character reads the playbill and realizes it's connected to the ghosts haunting the theater. It was a simple setup. She picks it up, reads a few lines, and reacts with fear. But when we rolled the cameras, something went wrong. Lily picked up the playbill, started her lines, and then froze. Her eyes went wide, and she dropped the prop like it was burning her hands. It fluttered to the floor, and she stumbled back. Gasping, Marcus yelled, "Cut!" and stormed over, clearly annoyed. "What's wrong?" he asked. Lily just shook her head, her face pale. I don't know," she stammered. "I just felt dizzy all of a sudden." She looked rattled, and her hands were shaking as she sat down. Marcus grumbled about wasting time, but we moved on to another shot. I didn't think much of it at the time. Actors can get overwhelmed, especially on a tight schedule. Later that night, when I was cleaning up, I found the playbill on the stage. Out of curiosity, I picked it up and looked at it. The title of the play was The Hollowjp. I smiled, thinking it was a clever nod to the movie's title. But then I read the cast list. The names were odd, not generic placeholder names like you'd expect from a prop that was specific, old-fashioned: Eleanor Vane, Cassius Black, Lydia Thorne, and a few others. I showed it to Tara, who was packing up her camera. She frowned and said, "That's weird. I don't remember the prop department making it that detailed." We laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I slipped the playbill into my bag, thinking I'd ask the prop guy about it later. By the third day, the weirdness was impossible to ignore. The Rosewood started to feel less like a set and more like a living thing. Equipment kept malfunctioning for no reason. Microphones picked up static that sounded like faint voices, even when no one was speaking. Dave spent hours checking cables and batteries, muttering about interference, but he couldn't find anything wrong. Lights flickered, even when they were plugged into brand new generators. And then there were the shadows. I'd see them out of the corner of my eye, fleeting human-shaped blurs that darted across the edges of the auditorium or disappeared behind the curtains. Every time I turned to look, nothing was there. I wasn't the only one. Jake, one of the actors, started refusing to go backstage alone. He said it felt like someone was standing right behind him, breathing on his neck. I thought he was just getting into character. Method actors can be intense, but his fears seemed genuine. He'd linger near the crew, avoiding the darker corners of the theater. Lily was struggling too. She started talking about dreams she'd been having since we arrived. In them, a woman in a red dress stood on the stage, staring at her. The woman never spoke, but Lily said her eyes were wrong, too dark, too deep, like they weren't human. She laughed it off at first, saying it was probably just the stress of the shoot, but I could tell it was getting to her. She'd flinch at sudden noises and kept looking over her shoulder, like she expected someone to be there. Marcus, the director, was getting frustrated. We were behind schedule and the crew was on edge. He called a meeting and told us to stop being superstitious. "It's an old building," he said. "It's creepy, that's the point. Let's use that energy and make the movie scary, not scare ourselves." I wanted to believe him, but the atmosphere in the Rosewood was changing. It wasn't just creepy anymore, it felt hostile. The real terror started on the fourth night. We were filming the movie's climax, a scene where the characters perform a ritual to contact the spirits in the theater. It was a big moment, candles chanting, the whole spooky package. The auditorium was dark except for our set lights, and the actors were in a circle on stage, holding candles and reciting lines from the script. The air was thick with tension, even before we started rolling. Maybe it was the late hour or the exhaustion, but everyone seemed on edge. We got through the first take without issue, but during the second, things went wrong. The candles, real ones, not LED props, flickered all at once. Not a breeze, not a draft, but every single flame dimmed and sputtered in unison. The room got cold, so cold I could see my breath. The actors froze, looking around, their lines trailing off. Marcus called, "Keep going," but his voice sounded shaky. Then the stage lights, battery-powered, not even plugged in, started flashing. On, off, like a strobe light gone haywire. The actors stopped completely, and Lily let out a small whimper. That's when we heard it, a scream, not from the cast or crew, but from somewhere deep in the theater backstage, maybe, or the balcony. It was high-pitched, guttural, and it echoed in a way that made my skin crawl. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Tara whispered, "What the hell was that?" But no one answered. Then the props started moving, not falling or tipping, but sliding across the stage. A chair skidded a few inches, a table shifted, a dusty old mirror we'd set up for the scene tilted and crashed to the floor, shattering into 100 pieces. Lily screamed and backed away, tripping over a cable. Jake was yelling, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And pointing at the corner of the stage. I followed his gaze, and that's when I saw her. A woman in a red dress, standing in the shadows. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes were wrong. They were black, not just dark, but like voids that swallowed the light. She was staring right at me, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. I blinked, and she was gone. But I wasn't the only one who saw her. Jake was still pointing, his face white as a sheet, stammering, "She was there. She was right there." The set erupted into chaos. Half the crew wanted to pack up and leave right then. Lily was crying, curled up in a chair, saying she'd seen the woman from her dreams. Jake was pacing, muttering about quitting. Even Marcus looked shaken, though he tried to play it off, shouting for everyone to calm down and reset the scene. But no one was listening. Dave was already halfway out the door, his sound equipment dangling from his hands. We ended the shoot early that night and gathered in the parking lot, too freaked out to go back inside. Tara pulled out her phone and started Googling the history of the Rosewood Theater. What she found made my blood run cold. In 1947, a fire broke out during a performance of a play called The Hollowjp. The entire cast, Eleanor Vane, Cassius Black, Lydia Thorne, and others, died when the stage collapsed in flames. The official report blamed faulty wiring, but locals had other stories. They said the theater was cursed, that the actors who died were trapped there, their spirits bound to the stage. There were reports of strange noises, shadowy figures, even actors feeling hands on their shoulders when no one was there. The theater, that was abandoned after the fire, and no one had used it for filming until we showed up. I pulled the playbill from my bag and showed it. To Tara, her eyes widened as she read the names. "This is impossible," she said. "There's no way the prop department made this. These are the real names from 1947. We sat there in silence, the weight of it sinking in. The playbill wasn't a prop, it was real. We tried to finish the shoot. Marcus was determined to salvage the project, saying we could work around the technical difficulties. But the next 2 days were a nightmare. Equipment kept breaking, cameras wouldn't focus, lights blew out, and Dave's audio recordings were filled with whispers we couldn't explain. The actors were too scared to perform. Lily refused to step on the stage, and Jake kept muttering about eyes in the dark. Even Marcus was losing his edge, snapping at everyone and looking over his shoulder. On the final night, I was alone in the auditorium, packing up gear. The rest of the crew was outside, loading the van. The theater was quiet, too quiet, and I felt that heavy air again, like it was pressing down on me. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the stage. I turned, expecting to see a crew member, but no one was there. The curtains swayed, even though there was no breeze. My heart was racing, and I told myself to stay calm, to grab my stuff and get out. That's when I felt it. A cold hand brushed the back of my neck, like fingers trailing across my skin. I froze, too terrified to move. The air grew colder, and I swear I heard a whisper, right in my ear, "Stay." I dropped the cables I was holding and ran, not stopping until I was outside, gasping in the warm night air. I didn't look back. We never finished the Hollow Veil. Marcus tried to edit what we had, but the footage was a mess. Every frame from that night shoot was corrupted, distorted, filled with static, and laced with glimpses of a figure in a red dress that no one remembered filming. I quit freelancing for a few months after that. I couldn't sleep without seeing those black eyes, hearing that whisper. The Rosewood Theater is still there, boarded up, rotting in the woods. I drive past it sometimes when I'm in Millhaven, but I never stop. I can't shake the feeling that something in that theater is still waiting, watching for someone else to step onto its stage. Was it a ghost, a hallucination, my mind playing tricks? I don't know. All I know is that I'll never set foot in that place again. If you're ever offered a job on a haunted set, do yourself a favor and say no. Some stories aren't worth telling. Thanks for watching and subscribe until next time.